What's up, guys? It's me, Alexander Jarvis from alexanderjarvis.com, and we'll be going through the marketplace financial model in this video. Now, this is the second video. In the previous one, I gave you an overview of how you should initially make sure you understand the model, some assumptions that you should be bearing aware, some settings that you should be making. In this video, I'm going to talk about how you should generally approach actually filling this in. And the first thing I'm going to say, if you didn't watch the first video, is that you need to read this blog called How to Fund a Financial Model Template, and in it, I'm going to give you how to actually fund a financial model template at a high level. So make sure to read it, it'll be instructive. Now, I think it's one of the first things that you should be thinking about or understanding is that you should not approach doing this model by just filling in every single cell as detailed as you can possibly think of, looking at the outcomes and saying, okay, I guess that's what it is. You want to be thinking about what you want the model to do and seeing if you can make it happen and get learnings along the way. So you start very hacky and then see what the outcome is. And then you make it a little bit better and then see what the outcome is. If your forecasts are too high, well, maybe you need to bring them down. If your costs are too high, well, maybe you need to bring them down. You can't have as many staff as you thought. You can't spend as much on marketing, bearing in mind how much you're going to potentially fundraise. So keep on triangulating the model to where you approximately want it to be. And start hacky, get more specific. I had a client who had specific numbers for pretty much every cell in the model, and then it turned out he needed 5 million and he was raising 1. And so suddenly no one was getting bonuses. People weren't getting 6-figure salaries, right? So start hacky and get specific over time as the model starts doing more and more of what you want. You'll also get more comfortable with the model over time. Now, unless you really, really know Excel and you really, really understand marketplaces, there's going to be a whole lot potentially in this model that you don't understand. There'll be like click through to open rates and emails. We're like, I don't know what those are. And you'll have to Google. And if you approach this model by having to understand everything in total detail at the start, you'll give up. Almost as many times as I almost gave up making this freaking model. Bear in mind, I had to learn all this stuff myself. And everyone starts somewhere, so it's totally fine. Just don't have an ego. When you see something you don't understand, investigate. And so Google's going to be your best friend here. So again, just to reiterate, triangulate to where you want to be. And that's why you need to read the blog and do the exercise. So you have a high level idea of where you want the model to be. Now, the first thing that I would personally do is obviously read the introduction and watch these videos. Understand how all the sheets link together. And then I would go into the formatting sheet and just set up, well, how many months of actuals do you have? Is it 0? Is it 6? Is it 9? Is it 11? And then set what your forecast start date is and what your actual start date is, as well as what your year end is going to be. Is it December? Is it August? Is it whatever? If you're using US dollars, fine. If you need to use euros, you can use the 50-fold macro to do that. Ignore this and put in what the corporation tax is. And the only time we'll ever need to go back to this sheet again is when the forecasting date changes because you want to add another month of actuals. Now, for the sake of just getting it done, I would just fill in the P&L actual because you'll understand at least the key numbers that the model is going to generate, the ones that you need to put in. So we have supply side customers, you have GMVs, transactions, revenues on both sides, all your expenses. So I'm aware that some people will not have them exactly as I have them here. So let's say you only count the number of suppliers you have because you haven't thought about creating avatars or different pricing tiers or something with Basic, Premium, Pro, in which case, say delete these and just aggregate your the suppliers into one row. They're going to feed in, you'll see here in the PL combined sheet, if we expand this out, go back up, that there's nothing here, right? And so when your start date starts and you're using my model with assuming that you have Basic, Premium, Pro, you'll see that there isn't an evolution here. But it's not a big deal because these are only going to feed into the forecast model at one of the other sheets. You won't be able to see that progression, but it's not the end of the world because you still have your aggregate number, right? So fill in your actual sheet, all these rows, and I'll cover this in 2 videos time after we talk about the control settings. So fill out everything you have here. If you haven't, well, actually, this is just actual, so it is what it is. If you have bad card fraud, etc., discounts and vouchers, you put those numbers in. It is what it is. And hopefully you understand the P&Ls and the operating cash flow calculations and the like, because that'll be a foundation for understanding the forecasting sheet and potentially what we'll be feeding into things. So once I've filled in my actuals, I would go into the control sheet and decide how I want to set up the model. So go into the staff sheet here and look, do you want to do the basic or do you want to do the detailed version? So basic or detailed, choose which one you want, okay? And that's what you're going to end up filling in. If you have support staff for customer care, customer success, if you have yes, you're going to use it. If you're not, turn the sheet off, and then it'll be grayed out and you don't have to see it. Same thing for staff. For revenue, include what you plan on doing within the next 3 years. If you never charge making a delta on payment revenues, or if you never, it's not in you're like an Uber-like business and you don't have listing fees, then you just turn these off, right? I guess actually maybe we should take a step back. I probably should have dealt with this earlier. So when I made this model, which was very, very difficult, by the way, I mapped out all the different types of marketplace models that I could think of. You know, whether or not like you're a listing business, like say Etsy or eBay, or where you're more of a service provider, so like Uber. And I listed them all out and I wrote down the different revenue streams they had, the different ways that they would acquire customers. And then I even thought about different types of potential Would you want to have more simple? Would you have more detailed versions of things? What were all the ways I could automate different aspects of things and then design the model around it? Now, there are considerations for doing that. It means that there are more cells, for example, more assumptions that you can be clicking here. Basic and detailed being obvious examples of that. And I have to make some trade-offs sometimes to enable me to try and cover all the different types of business model. So that may make complications if you really go into the details in some places of calculations of what GMV are versus your revenue, and potential applications then to how payments are calculated. These are very nerdy details, by the way. But just bear in mind that I have tried to make this a marketplace model to cover all types of marketplaces. Just bear that in mind, okay? So put in the different revenue streams that you're going to be having, again, because I've tried to account for all different types of marketplaces. So you'll see here on the demand side, we've got potential to generate advertising revenue, and probably a lot of people don't do that. So you just turn it off, in which case it gets grayed out. Decide the basis of which one to be doing your marketing. You'll have to watch the next video to understand the implications of this, but say if you use the marketing sheets driven, basically you can have a lot of detail to fill in. There's 4 or 5 sheets for each sides of it. You can build it out to be a ratio. So say you focus on supply, or you focus on demand. Well, then you can have detailed sheets on the supply side, and then just have a hack, I think, in the registration sheet, which just keeps your demand side or supply side, depending, as a ratio to the other one. And then you just put in some hacky approximate numbers, which should hopefully be good enough, and make it simpler for you. Also, you can have a manual supply and demand side, which is the simplest possible way with the minimum number of inputs that I need for the model, and complete this in the fastest way. So decide the approach that you want for marketing. If you're a bit non-committal here, perhaps you just start out using the manual and supply and demand. So you click here, manual supply and demand. And then you don't need these sheets, so you can turn them all off, because that's what we're going to be using. If you have a ratio of demand to supply, well, if it's a ratio to supply, you have this on and you have all these off, and vice versa. Marketing sheets driven for both, and you want to keep these on. Again, there's a basic and detailed version also of those, which you can decide. So I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but when you actually go into the sheets and see what you will and won't have to fill in, you'll eventually get it, because there's work involved, right? So set up this sheet depending on what you want. And that will then indicate what you need to be filling in the model. Because the things that you don't need to fill out have now been grayed out, which you'll see when we go into it. So we've got the P&L actual done, got your control sheet done. If you just want to see what the model can do, you could also set the actual sheet to the start date as a forecast, and therefore you don't have any actuals and it'll all be pure forecasting. You can play around with a bit, and then you could add your actuals. So where I would probably do is go into the marketing sheets. So where have we set up now? We're going to let's set up the most complicated version of this. So assuming you're going to fill in all the sheets, including channel sales and everything. Start with the last sheet on the supply side or demand side. By the way, all these sheets are basically exactly the same. They're just built for each side, assuming that you do all these initiatives. So you'd fill in, which I'll explain all this in other videos, right? So I'd fill in the rough assumptions. How many leads do I think approximately we're getting from people, the different partners, leads per month, conversion rates, approximately based on your best knowledge. And if you're using it on the demand side, fill in the demand side. Blog and social, which I'll explain in future videos, you'll fill in again, or set to 0 and not focus on it if it's not important and you're mainly driven off your paid on organic. Same thing for email marketing. Look at my assumptions. If they're reasonable, maybe just change your starting database or something. Social media followers you have, approximate numbers here, or just set them to 0. Fill everything out until you get to your paid and organic. Well, if you're being driven off paid acquisition as an engine of growth, put in approximately, maybe just even in one line, how much money you want to be spending a month, what the approximate CPCs that you have to see how much traffic generates. Then you go into the marketing sheets where you can convert that traffic. Open this up and you'll see that you got the basic and the detailed version. So you see what I meant that's been grayed out. We're going to hide this now because we're going to do the detailed version. And these all have little control thingy bobs where they go for either basic or detailed depending on what you set. We'll hide this. Set what you think the approximate conversion rates from traffic to trial or traffic to registration, if you will. And then see how many people are registering on your site. And do that on both the supply side and the demand side. But again, very approximately. This is going to generate customers. So if you want just to start getting a feel for it and putting best practice, you go into the KPI sheet and see how many customers are we getting on here. Is it, are we talking approximately the right range? All right, now it's time to generate some revenue. So we're going to go, again, see this is blacked out, manual supply and demand. So we're going to hide that. We're going to hide the ratios for both sides. And the one we have is actually already been done because it's part of the more complicated version. This registration sheet is needed for those other simpler variations. Then we go into conversion sheets. And I'll explain this again in another video because otherwise it will just take me too long to explain everything in detail. If we're doing, are we sales support or not? Do we use salespeople? If we're not, we set this to 0, right? And drag it across. And set it to 0 because we don't care about it. If we do, what approximate share of your site is going to be sales supported? Put a quick assumption here. Now, are your people basic, premium, pro? All right, I'll stop now. So I always use avatars or averages, which I put into basic package, premium package, and pro package. I don't care if you've got 4, you can always figure out a way to make it 3. And if you've got 10, that's too many. 3 is a good number. Everyone likes 3. I actually have a blog on my site called The Rule of 3. So approximately bucket these people. Don't spend too much time on it. A third if you want, or 60%, 20, 20, however you like. Bear in mind, it needs to add up to 100, which is why when you have these, you're going to fill in 2 numbers and the last one will be remainder. So if you have 100, you're going to put in 0 here and you'll see that it's 0 at the end. Okay, so it's 1 minus the sum. But we'll use whatever I have in the model for now. Okay, so we'll set up again we'll bucket these people up again, which again I'll cover another video. If my adoption curve, do I require people in the first month, whatever, I'm just going to stick in approximate numbers. Churn rates, well, I'm going to hold people for a year, or we're going to do it for this another conversion rate method, which we'll cover again in another video. Number of listings for people. Again, once you understand how to do this, you're just going to stick in hackish approximate numbers. And that's going to then get you to your customers. And then again, you get about the KPI forecast sheet, see that your numbers are approximately right. And now off those customers, we have the ability to generate revenue. So let's stick in some hacky numbers again so that we can come back here and see how much revenue we're going to approximately making. So let's say supply side is more important, and we're going to do all 4 methods. Open this up, go down to assumptions, then how much are we approximately charging? So for membership revenue, do we do this? Yes or no? If we do, fine. How much do you approximately charge? What percentage of people do it? If you have listing revenues, well, how much do you charge for listings? When are you going to be releasing them? You can set everything to 1, if you will. Whatever's the quickest way for you to start generating revenue. What percentage we have usage, number of purchases per listing per month will come out to generate more revenues. And do this for the basic, premium, pro. If you only do basic, you only need to fill in the basic. If you have the premium pro, fine, you fill those out too. If you have payment revenues, you can see the model's pretty big, so it's quite hard to explain this quickly. We'll be putting in what our charges, if we have payment subscriptions or not, how much we charge for transaction rates, on the basis of which we're going to be charging things, yes or no. But try and fill this out as quickly as possible and do basically exactly the same thing as the revenue one, except we're just going to have, I think, one additional channel, which is advertising revenue. So again, we're going to go back to the KPI forecast sheet and we'll see, is our revenue approximate right? Now, if it's not, we can go back and say, spend more money in marketing, looking at our CPCs, looking at different conversion rates. Are we approximately getting to where we want? If we're not, well, maybe we didn't really fill in our revenue sheets properly. So let's have a little bit more of a detailed look at that and make sure it makes sense. And so I wouldn't even bother dealing with the expense parts for a while until you get your approximate high level right. Yes, there's a lot of things you can potentially fill in, but again, just because there are calculations or assumptions in my model does not mean you need to use them. It's just there to try and make it as easy as possible for everyone, regardless of their business model, to just get the maximum result without any coding needed, right? You set the assumptions you use, you fill those out, and that's what it is. If in future you want to add these new revenue streams, the model's there for you to use it. So you could start out with a very basic ghetto version, and in 1 year or 2 years' time, when your business is larger and you know more, you can expand the model with that functionality I've already built in and take advantage of it. But right now, if you don't know very much, just keep it basic and start learning more and more and more, okay? So if it's a bit overwhelming seeing how much there is, it's because I built it to make life easier for you. Because just because it's there doesn't mean you have to use it. Okay, I think I've explained that enough. But I would start out by driving some traffic, thinking roughly about my conversion rates from traffic to registration, then your registration to your customer rates, and then how much money you're making from those customers. So that gets you down to revenue. Once you're roughly happy with that, it's time to start spending some money. So the first sheet I would probably go into in terms of materiality is going to be the staff sheet. So decide again, are we using the complicated version or using the simple version? So if we're using the basic version, when do you approximately think you're going to hire people? So G&A is gross administration, R&D is research development, S&M is sales and marketing, COGS is cost of goods sold, or customer care type people. When do you think possibly going to hire people? These are for more managerial roles. Sales and customer care and customer success are automated. So they'll be done in the support staff and sales support sheet if you use them. If you don't, then you just set the assumption to 0, turn off the sheets, don't use them. You don't have to have it there. But again, it's expanded functionality for you. I spent 6 weeks doing nothing other than modeling. So in future, I'm going to have a modular model so that you can just buy the pieces that you need depending on what you want and just keep adding parts and expand the model, or have it simple if you want, and have these different automations if you want or if you don't want. But it's just still a lot of work for me to do. But for now, you've got the kitchen sink in here. So assuming we're using the basic version, we're going to put in what the average cost of people are, if we're potentially going to increase the salary or not. But again, these are averages. So they don't have to be perfectly right, they just need to be ballpark. And then that's sort of it, right? So we have some onboarding costs, you can leave them as they are here if you want. General other costs, again, you can leave my assumptions are. And then, maybe just look at the top in terms of a summary and see if your numbers approximately look right in terms of the spend per year. And then go to the KPI sheet again and see, well, how much is that making in terms of cost? Look at some of the KPIs. Are we trying the right direction? Okay, cool. If you're kind of happy with the staff sheet, you can fill in some automations. So if you're having customer care, customer success staff, we've got 4 blocks, the demands, so customer care and customer success for both the demand side and the supply side. If you do not do customer success, you just make sure all the numbers are 0 and you don't have it anymore, right? It's all gone. That's it. Boom. We don't have customer success people anymore, or maybe you do. If you have customer care people, we'll put in some general assumptions. What percentage of people need it? How much time does it take to serve them? How many hours do people actually work? And then look again, see how that links into the staff sheet. You can see the things link in. Oh, okay, I understand how that works. If you do sales staff, again, you fill in the assumptions. We'll cover these in future videos, but put in rough numbers and then look again. Do these numbers sort of make sense? Is this about how much I want to be spending a year on staff? You can be looking at the KPI forecast sheet again. What are your numbers? They kind of look right, like they make sense. You want to keep on looking at this KPI sheet because these are the ones that you want to end up basically knowing off by heart or knowing approximately what they should be, the general direction which things should be. Now, once you've kind of done these in, I just pop into my expense calcs. So how do you charge? Look, if you're just doing credit card, you set this to 0. You see everything will get grayed out, right? You just have to fill in the credit card, which is really easy. If you just charge 2.9% transaction fee, fine. If you charge 20 cents on addition of that, or you've been charged 20 cents, that's what it is. That's it. If you do other things, like, I don't know, you have 30% PayPal and you have 10% bank transfers and payment delivery, say if you're in Asia, which could be a lot higher, then you fill out those numbers too. If you don't, you just stick to credit card. That's it, all right? Or PayPal, add it if you want. Not hard. Now, with server costs and email, you fill in the assumptions here. I'm not going to explain it here because it's not that material. If server costs are, or email costs are a material part of your business, spend more time on it. Otherwise, just make sure, are these numbers approximately right? No one's going to spend that much time, so long as you sort of ballpark. Again, if it's really important, spend more time. If it's not, don't. Now, we filled out most model. I get into, say, my P&L now, and there's not many numbers to fill in, so it's very quick. Stick in what the discounts and voucher rates you think it is, if you have cancellations, bad debt, credit card frauds, and that's basically it. When do you plan on fundraising? Put an approximate number, say 6 million here at this point. And then, have a look at what your forecasting sheet looks like. You look at the P&L combined. How are we trending? So you can see the first couple of months are going to be your actuals. Are there any weird jumps? I mean, if you suddenly go from 150 to 2 million people, you've done something wrong, right? So long as things are trending and, steadily, not too high increases, you might be on track. But if you're completely off track, you've done something wrong, in which case you go and investigate and figure out what that is. And what do I do next? So we've done P&L actual, P&L forecast, P&L combined, nothing in. Depreciation tax, I just have a look, okay? If so long as, your useful life of things is approximately right, I'd leave it as it is, because unless you're actually profitable, these things don't matter. If you are a very profitable business or a CFO, you understand it, you can fill these numbers in. But if you're a total noob, just ignore it and move on. You can see the P&L deck, but I'd ignore it until the very, very end of the process. Source and use is something I would not look at until the very end of the process, when you're pretty much sure about your revenue forecast and expenses approximately. But you use this to figure out if your fundraise is going to be enough. And so, in terms of months of runway, how much money you're going to be needing, you look at this right at the end. Again, you can maybe be looking at your charts now and seeing are things sort of trending the right way. All right, do things kind of make sense or not? If they don't, go investigate. Like if your payment costs, are too high, maybe I have to go to check what that is. It's too much of a share. And then basically be iterating again. So you go through these things. Where do things start not making sense? I don't know, we're losing too much money at this point of time. Well, what are the costs? Well, oh god, my SG&A is pretty high. Maybe I should have a look at that. My R&D, 400k a year, is that what I want to be spending? Go investigate that and then start improving it. And once you've had a solid run of running through all the sheets through sort of investigations to triage things, then I would go through things with a fine-tooth comb. So just because each sheet is dealt with separately, you can make it as a discrete task that you need to do. Say, okay, Alex, fine, you'll do 4 sheets today, okay, goal. And then set up what you need to do. So go through this channel sales sheet again. I've already opened this one. And look at these, name the partners. Are the leads per month right? Are the growth rates right? Are my conversion rates approximately? Look at how much my CPL, CPAs are. Are they approximately in line with what it is in the other marketing sheets? Yes or no? Looking at your marketing charts or the contribution of where things happening. So we see channel sales is actually quite an important aspect to it. Maybe you're not doing any of it, so it's kind of presumptuous to assume that you make it work. Maybe it should be a smaller percentage. Paid, it's only around 20%. Is that reasonable? In which case, maybe you should be cooling off the amount that you're doing on this sort of more organic or earned media aspects and focusing more on paid aspect. That's something that you need to be triangulating around. And then, say paid needs become an issue. Well, again, go back, look at your CPC rates. Are these reasonable? Typically, your acquisition costs are going to increase over time, not decrease, at least at scale. Maybe you can reattribute some numbers to different channels where they might have better CPC rates. Try to optimize that and get to a point where you think your numbers are pretty reasonable. And basically keep repeating this until you look at the KPI sheets and metrics start making sense. You look at your acquisition costs, your LTV CAC ratios, both on an unloaded and fully loaded basis, looking at your funnels. Do these things all kind of make approximate sense? If they do, you're pretty spot on. And if your revenue goals year on year are right, and that you can spend the right amount of money through your fundraise to achieve those things, you're probably on par. So if you notice one thing about this video, it's a bit frantic, right? I'm not specifically telling you step 1, steps 2, step 3. It's because the whole process is meant to be a bit more experiential and a bit more sporadic rather than just following linear and filling everything in properly. Sorry, my nose is fucking itchy. Don't try to do anything perfect at the start. Just stick some numbers in and see what happens. And you'll start getting ahead. Oh, if I do this, that thing happens. Cause and effect, right? Because you want to understand the interrelationships between all those numbers, which will help you for your own business to understand the levers you pull to increase your growth or to increase your profitability, for example. So just get familiar with the model. Don't get completely overwhelmed. Pick a place, put in some approximate numbers, see what happens. Put some numbers in some other places, see what happens. Maybe you start out, just for simplicity purposes, using the basic versions of the marketing sheets, which you go into the control sheet, you set the marketing to say manual supply and demand, and therefore you go into the, I think it's the registration sheet. You see this is all grayed out now. And you hide those up. We open up the manual supply and demand one, and that's all you need to fill in to start. You don't have to fill all those marketing sheets out. You literally just put in approximately how many registrations you can have on the supply and the demand side, how it's going to grow, what the approximate cost to people are going to be, and that's all you need to do. So just to start the model, maybe to start there. And then as you kind of see it, oh, that kind of makes sense. You know the approximate costs that you want to have, the growth rates you have, make a note of them, and then change the switch to the more advanced version and then level up. Maybe you could maybe even just start on one side and have it as a ratio too, and see how that works out and continually build up that knowledge. On the staff side, once you've seen that, oh, okay, this is approximately right. But you know what? Actually, I'd like to ultimately, raise with my investors or for my own purposes, because not everyone has to use this to raise, is go into control and change the assumptions from basic to detailed. Then you go back to the staff sheet, and then you're going to hide this because it's all grayed out. Then you open up the detailed version, which is already open. Now you can see there's a whole lot more things that you filled in. And then you can actually just fill out everything in more detail. Have different kind of costs if you want. See how the bonus calculations, etc. are calculated. Remember that you get paid in the year end. Here are the bonuses. So we have accruals and we have the year end payouts. So you can keep using more difficult or sort of more detailed parts of the model just by starting simpler and then getting more complicated as you build up confidence. So how you approach it is totally up to you. The point is that you just need to start somewhere and then build it up, right? Don't start perfect with all your assumptions, just keep iterating, okay? Now, this might be a bit of a confusing video for you because you might have this expectation you're meant to know everything. Don't worry, I've got about 14 more videos to go, and I'm going to go through all the sheets. And if you watch them all once, you'll have a better understanding of everything that goes. And you can then rewatch the videos after maybe you've had a bit of a play with the model. Watch the videos again to build up that knowledge again. And ultimately then be able to iterate to the outcome you want. All right, guys, I hope that was hopefully a useful insight into how you go about approaching and embracing chaos in this model to get towards the outcome you want without feeling disheartened through the process. All right, guys, bye. Keep passing.